Did Snoop Dogg feel like something bad was going to happen that night? The next day, when we turned on the news, all we saw was yellow police tape. Everything looked terrible. Tupac Shakur had been shot 4 times after leaving the Mike Tyson boxing match in Las Vegas. He was riding in a car driven by Marion Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records. As soon as I heard, I jumped in my Hummer and drove straight to Vegas. When I got there, Suge was at home. He was standing up, but his head was wrapped in bandages. He came out and told us what happened, but the way he explained it felt strange. He sounded excited, almost happy. He said, "Man, when those guys started shooting at us, Tupac tried to jump into the backseat." He said he pulled Tupac down and told him to get low. The way Suge talked about it made it sound like Tupac was acting brave, like he was ready for anything. That must have been the energy Tupac showed him. I rushed to the hospital to see Tupac. At that time, me and him weren't really getting along. Things were bad between us. But before death row, Tupac was my friend. The first time I met him was at the rap party for the movie Poetic Justice. The DJ shouted out my name and said I was about to rap. Before I even got the mic, Tupac grabbed it. He rapped a verse, handed me the mic, then took it back. We went back and forth, rapping at each other kind of aggressively. We did this 4 or 5 times. Everyone at the party made a big circle around us. When we finished, we went outside. I asked for his number so I could call him later. That's when I realized how talented he was. I thought, man, this guy is special. I told Suge we should bring Tupac into death row. I said he needed a strong team, and together we could be unstoppable. Working together wasn't scary. Tupac brought out the best in me. Snoop took death row to a high level, but Tupac took it even higher. We thought the label would be so big we'd be printing our own money. But over time, I noticed how much control Suge had over Tupac. Suge gave Tupac the life he wanted, the flashy, tough, gangster lifestyle. Tupac wanted that image, and Suge knew how to give people exactly what they wanted. If Suge loved you, he loved you deeply. Death row felt like a family. But if Suge hated you, he hated you just as hard. He was feared across hip-hop. People talked about beatings, threats, and violence. Suge helped people get out of trouble. He paid millions for lawyers. He had big groups protecting people in court. He was the guy who fixed problems. But I started to worry. Tupac was full of anger. He wanted revenge. He believed people like Puff Daddy and Biggie were behind his New York shooting. He was convinced of it. He told me they set me up. And I told him, if they're your enemies, they're my enemies. But deep down, I didn't believe Biggie or Puff did it. It didn't feel right. Tupac didn't want peace. He wanted war. He felt untouchable. The East Coast versus West Coast fight kept growing. Magazines showed it like a game, but people in the streets took it seriously. It wasn't music anymore, it was danger. When Tupac played me a diss song about Biggie, I told him I didn't like it. I felt he was going too far. He didn't care. He wanted to crush everything. Then, just days later, Tupac was shot again. When I saw him in the hospital, he wasn't moving. He wasn't talking. He wasn't breathing on his own. His mom pulled me aside and told me to stay strong. That's when I knew it was serious. I leaned close and talked to him, hoping he could hear me. When I walked out, I threw up. My heart was broken. I still believed he would survive. He'd survived before, but this time he didn't. After Tupac died, things got worse. Violence spread. People wanted revenge. More people got hurt. I started to believe Suge played a role in all of it. I realized being at death row meant my life was always in danger. I didn't sign up to hurt people. I signed up to make music, so I left death row. Suge didn't like that. He wanted loyalty. I started hearing threats. People told me they wanted to hurt me. Even after leaving, the danger didn't stop. There were fights, police raids, guns, arrests. My family got dragged into it. That broke me. I realized I had to change or I would die. I had kids. I had a wife. I wanted to live. One day, I faced Suge alone. Just me and him, no bodyguards, we talked honestly. I forgave him. I walked away. That decision saved my life. I changed how I wrote music. I stopped writing about death. I started writing about living, about love, about happiness. I barely made it out alive, but I did. And now my goal is simple: to live, to love, to inspire, and to leave the violence behind. Because the only way to get love is to give love. Did Snoop Dogg feel that something terrible was coming before Tupac was shot? Some nights don't feel right. You don't know why, but your heart feels heavy. The air feels different. And later, when something bad happens, you look back and think, I should have known. That's the question people still ask today. Did Snoop Dogg sense danger before that night in Las Vegas? The morning after the Mike Tyson boxing match, the news was on. Yellow police tape filled the screen. Sirens, flashing lights. Tupac Shakur had been shot 4 times while sitting in a car. The car was being driven by Suge Knight, the powerful boss of Death Row Records. In just seconds, everything changed. For Snoop Dogg, this wasn't just a headline. This was family. Snoop didn't wait. He jumped into his Hummer and drove straight to Las Vegas. His mind was racing the entire way. Tupac wasn't just a rapper. He was a brother, a teammate, someone Snoop believed made Death Row unstoppable. When Snoop finally saw Suge Knight, something felt wrong. Suge was standing. His head was wrapped in bandages, but he was smiling, laughing, telling the story like it was exciting, like it was a movie scene instead of a real man bleeding for his life. Suge talked about how Tupac tried to move during the shooting. He laughed while explaining it. That bothered Snoop deeply. This wasn't how someone talked when their friend might die. Snoop rushed to the hospital. At that time, he and Tupac weren't getting along. Things were tense. Words had been said. Feelings were hurt. But none of that mattered now. When Snoop walked into that hospital room, he didn't see the strong Tupac he knew. He didn't see Superman. Tupac wasn't moving. He wasn't talking. He wasn't breathing on his own. His mother pulled Snoop aside and told him to stay strong. That's when Snoop knew. Still, part of him believed Tupac would survive. He had survived before. He had been shot before. Tupac always came back stronger. That's who he was. But this time felt different. As the hours passed, Snoop started thinking about everything that led to this moment. The anger, the threats, the East Coast versus West Coast war, the music that wasn't just music anymore. The people who pushed Tupac deeper into danger instead of pulling him back. And one name kept coming back into his mind. Suge Knight. Suge was powerful, feared, loved by some, hated by many. He knew how to give people what they wanted. And Tupac wanted the gangster lifestyle, the fame, the respect, the fear. Snoop started asking himself hard questions. Was Tupac being protected or controlled? Was Death Row really a family or a trap? And if Tupac was gone, who would be next? That night in Vegas didn't just take Tupac's life. It cracked open the truth behind Death Row Records. And it forced Snoop Dogg to face one terrifying question. If I stay on this path, will I die too? To understand how things reached this point, you have to go back to the beginning, before Death Row became dangerous. Snoop Dogg first met Tupac Shakur at the Poetic Justice rap party. It wasn't planned. It wasn't serious. The DJ shouted Snoop's name and called him to the mic. Before Snoop could even rap, Tupac grabbed the microphone. They started battling back and forth, not angry but intense, competitive, sharp. Everyone at the party stopped and formed a circle around them. When it was over, Snoop knew right away Tupac was special. Outside the party, Snoop asked for Tupac's number. That night, a friendship started. Later, Snoop told Suge Knight they needed Tupac at Death Row. He believed Tupac would make them stronger, bigger, legendary. And at first, he was right. Tupac brought energy, passion, fire. Death Row exploded, the music was powerful, the attention was massive, they felt unstoppable. But with success came influence, and Suge Knight had plenty of it. Suge knew how to give people what they wanted. If he loved you, he treated you like gold. If he didn't, life became hell. Tupac wanted the image of a powerful gangster leader, and Suge fed that image every day. Slowly, Tupac changed. He became angrier, more aggressive, focused on revenge. He believed rappers from New York, especially Biggie and Puff Daddy, were responsible for his earlier shooting. Snoop didn't believe it. It didn't feel right to him. But Tupac didn't want to hear that. The East Coast versus West Coast fight grew bigger than music. Magazines showed it like entertainment, but people in the streets took it seriously. Neighborhoods chose sides. Violence followed. When Tupac played Snoop a diss song attacking Biggie, Snoop warned him. He said it was going too far. Tupac didn't care. He wanted war. Then Tupac was shot in Las Vegas. After Tupac's death, everything fell apart. Violence spread. People wanted revenge. Shootings increased. Snoop felt like his life was in danger every day. He began to realize that being part of death row meant always looking over your shoulder. Snoop didn't sign up for that. He signed up to make music. So he left Death Row Records. That decision made Suge Knight furious. Snoop started hearing threats. People told him Death Row wanted him hurt. There were fights at shows, police raids, arrests, guns. His family was even threatened by law enforcement trying to pressure him. That broke him. He looked at his children and knew something had to change. Eventually, Snoop faced Suge one last time, alone. No guards, no weapons, just words. Snoop forgave him and walked away. That moment saved his life. Snoop changed how he lived, changed how he wrote music. He stopped writing about death and started writing about life, about peace, about surviving. He barely made it out. But he did. And today, Snoop Dogg's story stands as a warning and a lesson. Fame without peace is dangerous. Loyalty without truth can kill you. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away. By the time Snoop Dogg finally stepped away from death row, it was clear that something had to give. Too much had already been lost. Too many friends were gone. Too many nights were spent wondering who would be next. Tupac was dead. Biggie would be gone soon after. And Snoop knew, deep in his heart, that if he stayed on the same path, he might be next. For years, Snoop had lived in survival mode, always watching, always listening, always ready. He had beaten a murder case. He had watched his closest friend die in a hospital bed. He had been hunted by people he once called family. That kind of life changes you. At some point, Snoop realized something important. Being tough wasn't about violence anymore. Being strong wasn't about revenge. And being real didn't mean dying young. It meant living long enough to tell the truth. Snoop looked at his children and understood something he never fully understood before. They didn't need a gangster. They didn't need a legend. They needed a father who came home alive. That's when everything changed. He stopped writing music that prepared him for death. He started writing music that prepared him for life. He chose joy over anger, peace over pride, love over loyalty to the wrong people. And that choice saved him. When Snoop says he barely made it out, he means it. There were moments when one wrong decision would have ended everything. One meeting, one show, one argument, one night. But Snoop learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes walking away is the bravest move you can make. Death Row Records started as a family. Every family photo looks beautiful in the beginning. Everyone smiling, everyone proud. But by the end, people are missing from the picture. Some fell to violence. Some fell to prison. Some never made it out at all. Snoop survived, not because he was the toughest, but because he was smart enough to change. That's the part of this story people don't talk about enough. This isn't just a story about Tupac. It isn't just a story about Suge Knight. It isn't just hip-hop history. It's a warning. When music turns into fuel for anger, people get hurt. When loyalty becomes blind, lives are destroyed. When pride becomes more important than peace, nobody wins. Snoop saw all of that up close. And instead of letting it kill him, he let it teach him. Today, Snoop Dogg is still here, still smiling, still making people laugh, still inspiring millions. Not because he stayed in the chaos, but because he walked away from it. That's why this story matters. Because there are kids right now listening to music that talks about death like it's cool. There are young people who think being feared is better than being loved. There are artists who believe pain is the only thing worth writing about. But Snoop's story proves something else. You can change. You can survive. You can choose life. So if this story made you think, if it made you feel something, if it opened your eyes even a little, hit the like button so more people can hear this truth. Subscribe if you want real stories told honestly. No fake hype, no sugarcoating. Comment below and tell us, do you think Tupac could have survived if things were different? Or was the path already set? And most importantly, share this story. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to walk away. Share it with someone who thinks they're trapped. Share it with someone who believes they have to stay loyal to something that's hurting them. Because survival is a legacy too. Snoop Dogg didn't just survive the most dangerous era in hip-hop history, he escaped it. And by doing so, he turned pain into wisdom, fear into freedom, and chaos into peace. And that might be the greatest story hip-hop has ever told.